Thank you all for being here. So, in a phone conversation with Jerry about a month ago, we came up with this working title, Icons. In the future, everybody will be famous to 15 people, or in the future, only 15 people become famous. So how does a work of art get traction? We discussed Jeff Koons' puppy and Kara Walker's new float that is in the sugar factory. It's a large Sphinx. And we thought, do they just exist in a parade floating by, or are they memorable objects? Who generates enduring images today? And how are they distributed and displayed? So let me first define the way we're using icons, because it's not going to be the religious icons of the past, nor is it going to be the pictographs that we use on our computers today as roadmaps, but rather how an icon is a well-known and valued cultural symbol. This may be a person, it might be an icon, it might be a logo, an artwork, an image. So artists and designers, as we all know, have made some of our most enduring iconic images, from Rodin's Thinker to Warhol's Marilyn, to Carolyn Davidson's graphic Nike swoosh, to Susan Carr's Apple icon for Macintosh. Unless you're like Kimye or Lady Gaga, how unlikely is it to be or make an icon today? So today, how does an art object interface with the larger public and become iconic? When I Googled several different searches on Google for iconic images in the 20th and 21st century, these were the kinds of images that came up regularly. Marilyn Monroe's 7-Year Itch, Jim Morrison, Muhammad Ali, the Get Up image, Mother Teresa, Marlon Brando from The Wild One, Einstein sticking out his tongue, Farrah Fawcett, John Lennon, Florence Owens Thomas, Migrant Mother. The only painting to come up in the 20th century was Grant Wood's American Gothic, Shepard's Ferry, Obama's Hope poster, the Apple icon, Nelson Mandela, the Twin Towers being blown up, and finally, the Starbucks icon. When this icon came up, I thought, I'm not going to look any further. I'm going to turn this panel over to these art pundits. And so let me first introduce you to them. So Jerry Saltz, beloved columnist and senior art critic for New York Magazine. He's been nominated for 3 Pulitzers for criticism. He's published 2 books on criticism, Seeing Out Loud and Louder. Together, we were judges on Bravo's TV Work of Art. Yeah, but here's the thing. I was able to have good posture and learn how to be in front of a camera, while you had thousands and thousands of followers on your blog for the Vulture on New York Magazine.
But you knew to quit the show after the first year. I did not know that.
Anyone willing to write into Jerry will share in an art dialogue with him. He remains the most active art critic to write on social media. He posts daily diatribes and unfiltered comments.
What?
Yes. And rather than dismissing Kanye's Bound 2 video as clueless kitsch, he has defined it as the new uncanny. He has celebrated Cindy Sherman as a shopaholic. He actually really liked the 3 paintings that George W. Bush, that were posted of George W. Bush by a hacker.
I would buy them at a yard sale.
Yeah, yes, you would.
I would have done it.
And most recently, he openly called Jeff Koons the art world's own bland Mitt Romney Teletubby, and has coined the new abstract painting, zombie abstraction. He's been a truck driver, and most recently, as of last night, you can be coined, alongside Maurizio Cattelan and William Wegman, the funniest guy in the art world. He did stand-up. So Marilyn Minter is a visual artist in New York who I happen to work with and have the privilege of. Her paintings and photos and videos depict the underbelly of glamour. Rarely taking on commissions, she has chosen to photograph very specific iconic subjects. Tom Ford, Pamela Anderson, Stephanie Seymour, and most recently, Stella McCartney, making iconic images of icons. She has for many years worked for advertising, editorials, and public spaces, and has been one of the few artists to embrace popular culture as part of her critique. In her editorial, she has insisted on using mixed-race models and challenges her glossy magazine editors on the subject of beauty. Her images are frankly passed around the art world and the fashion world as contraband. And even most recently, she was commissioned by Playboy to do a new erotic series, which was called Bringing Back the Bush. Okay, now to get serious. She has an upcoming retrospective starting at CAM in Houston and traveling to the MCA in Denver, Orange County, and the Brooklyn Museum, and I'm sure there will be several more institutions to take on the show. She is in constant dialogue with visual artists and is a visiting artist at SVA. She is also an animal rights activist and a supporter of Planned Parenthood. So since 2000, Thelma Golden has served as the director and the chief curator at the Studio Museum in Harlem. She's, before that, spent a decade at the Whitney Museum, and we all know curated groundbreaking exhibitions such as the Black Male representations of masculinity in contemporary art. She has championed the then emerging African American artists Glenn Ligon, Lorna Simpson, Gary Simmons. And in her TED Talk entitled How Art Gives Shape to Cultural Change, which, by the way, nears almost 500,000 viewers, she really discusses what it means to be post-Black. Since 2010, she has served on President Obama's Committee of Preservation, and I must say most recently was seated next to Obama at his state dinner for President Francois Hollande of France, solving a diplomatic problem of who he should be seated by.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And by the way, she did not know that she would be seated there until she went through the receiving line, and Obama very casually said, "Oh, I look forward to catching up at dinner tonight." So suffices to say, Thelma Golden, you are our panel's icon. So now I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. Each, Jerry and Marilyn will give a little introduction, and then we'll go straight in. So Jerry, over to you.
Wow, what a great set of introductions. I was riveted, honestly. Can you all hear me? They just put this microphone on. Okay. I'm Jerry Saltz. I'm an art critic, and we all love Jeannie Greenberg as one of the most loved and respected people in the art world, and I just want to get on record as saying that. And has great kids, damn it. Yeah. November 1978, the earth moved for me. Outside the Guggenheim Museum, I saw, other than Muhammad Ali, I think the most famous person then on earth for me. When I think about fame, and I'm just like riffing on the subject of icon, first I wanted to think about people before things. I was thinking after Ali, this means somebody known in every country, from Thailand to Colombia. Somebody's phone is ringing? The Rubels, okay. To India, to Indiana, to everywhere. I mean, everywhere. So you got to be careful when you're talking about total icon, right? Ali, at that point on Earth, and I think John Lennon. I fell right into John Lennon and Yoko Ono walking out of a Mark Rothko exhibition at the Guggenheim. And I fell into line behind them in awe. I still feel it in my chest. I fell in line behind them as they walked downtown on Madison Avenue and did a great thing. I was awesome because I knew somehow even then, the voyeur in us all, don't look at them. Look at their aura and what they produce around them. And sure enough, as they walked down Madison Avenue, on the west side of the street, and I still feel this whenever I'm there. It's almost like when you're going to a city and there are places you go, oh, I had sex in that building. Do you have that? No. Maybe only men have that. You don't have that?
I want to have that.
Well, I'm more desperate than you are. I was more needy even then. I watched the world part in awe as they approached. No one said a word. Everyone fell because they knew, their bodies knew, they were in the presence of something godlike. The sum of all things at that moment, right? Something royal, godlike, forever. Fame, the strange, strange love. Fame that corrodes. Fame that is beautiful. Fame that is like monotheism, right? Where you find one thing and all of this energy. I thought Jeff Koons' puppy had this at the time in a negative way, that it would suck all evil out of the world. But, you know, art critics have to make up something. And I always thought if Osama bin Laden had stood in front of this idiotic puppy, that for 5 minutes, all his evil would have gone out of his, like, a kundalini right into the puppy. But that's me. They were the sum of everything. Since then, fame went feral, if you know what I mean. It became wild. Everybody started becoming famous. Andy, St. Andy, of course, was right. In the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. And then I tried to rewrite that to say, in the future, everyone will be famous to 15 people. What do I mean? Right now, the most famous people in the world make it up on YouTube, online, on social media. You know, I'm the most read art critic. I'm not the best. I love my work. I mean, I'm a maniac for me. But I found by not abandoning, but by making a cross section, instead of the one speaking to the many, that you can have the many speaking to one another, making the decision together while still at least pretending you're an authority, okay? As an art critic or a famous person. Right now, go on YouTube. You will find people that get 3 million hits. And what they'll do is like juggle bottles, or they'll recite names. And now they have really big conventions where tens of thousands, 30, 40,000 people show up and they know them all. And they know their famous icons intimately. It has become a beautiful pagan, horizontal God iconicity where everybody can know their icon. You can never know whoever the older icons are. You can't know them. Some of us get to be lucky and meet one. By the way, whenever you're in a room with one of these people, you know what you're thinking the whole time? Oh my God, I'm sitting next to President Obama. Oh my God, I'm sitting. The aura cannot go away. Monotheism is like, God said, and I'll be done in a second. God said, am I going on too long?
You're never gonna be done.
God
Go on.
said, thou shalt have no other gods before me, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. You know what God meant? That he knows there are other gods. They're in Egypt where they worship like dung and the sun, and the Greeks are worshiping each other's like wieners and vajayjays, and the Italians are over there, and then it's like at the end of the Silk Road, there's like people worshiping grasshoppers. And the idiot Hittite god, mine, the Jew god, I love him, but you know, Yahweh, you're a pain in the ass. That monotheistic God would have no other loves. That is what I mean by this strange, strange love. So in order to be an icon now, all you have to do is take matters into your own goddamn hands. Barnett Newman said, how did you make this art world? They once asked him. And he's a big, gassing, loudmouth, great artist, but like this. Right, Ronnie? You probably knew him, blah, 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 blah. But he said a great thing. He said, we are making it out of ourselves. You better make this up. You do not wait for authority to grant you your job, your position, to get into David's Werner gallery or Jeannie's gallery. They may never see you. You better take agency. I promise you, if you dance naked in public, you will be loved. Maybe not enough. But you will get something because you're so fucked up that you need. So that's just a beginning point of talking about icon as human.
All right, so
Sorry. I won't talk anymore.
all right, Marilyn, you can from everybody to some famous people.
Iconic people. Pamela Anderson. When I shot her, she was probably the most famous woman on earth, and this was in 2006. And at the time I was asked to do her portrait, that same confluence of events happened. Parquet asked me to collaborate with them. And I'm always a believer in dismissive imagery and debased imagery. It's so much more important that when we pretend that it doesn't exist, or we can dismiss it, or it's shallow, but it'll crush you. I love how you put it. It's flattening. And I think that we have to pay attention to that, the way Jeff Koons pays attention to that, because it is a portrait of who we are. And so I knew that I couldn't do a portrait of somebody like Pamela Anderson to do her justice. First of all, I never do portraits of anybody. I do close-ups. And I've never even photographed a whole human being. I don't even know how. But I'm very, very good at close-ups. And so I just took all her makeup off and cut her bangs. And they put her on the cover of Parquet, and they made her into the centerfold. Wow. Which was what my desire was, and I didn't know if they'd do it or not. Actually, they didn't even know what a centerfold was. It's a Swiss intellectual magazine. I had to draw a picture of it in centerfold and fax it to them. So that was Pam, and here's another image I did of her. And also, I took all her makeup off, gave her bangs because she's an animal rights activist, and she makes her living being a pinup. She's one of the few women who takes control of her own agency. She controls her distribution. She's not an actress, she's not a singer, she's not a dancer. She makes her money off her image. And that I thought was an act of feminism. And she's also worked with other artists. She's got a real interest in the art world. At this point, I think I was the first woman, but she'd worked with Richard Prince and Jeff Koons and Ed Ruscha. They see, how smart she is too. So this was in 2006, and it's like she's a product of the culture. She knew how to make money off her own image, and it's already, she's female, so she's getting dismissed because she's not allowed to age, which is one of my also things I'm quite interested in. And then Jeannie was talking about mixed race. I don't think that's that unusual. I think that is the future, and I just wanted to be the person who introduces it to the fashion world, because it's regularly dismissed because they feel like it doesn't sell. And I'm always I do editorial. I don't really get advertising jobs because I'm way too messy. I don't Photoshop my images. I work a lot with film, and I won't clean things up because I think perfection is the flaw. So this is one of the models I used to love to work with. She's a blue-eyed African-American artist from Ohio. And then Tom Ford, he's an iconic image, and he's so elegant. And the only thing I could do with him was disrupt the elegance. And I think he lives here in Aspen. And it's really funny because we work together, but his sensibilities and mine are just polar opposites. And I appreciate him because he's what Glenn just said, you only have to be 90% perfect. He just said that in another panel discussion, and I think, boy, that's a relief, isn't it? Because he needs to know that too.
He is 100%. And in fact, he did not want the image of him used for his ad campaign.
Yeah, well, he couldn't handle most of my ads.
He could not handle it.
Because I had the lipstick smeared, and I put more freckles on the model, and I sweated them up. And but he used half, so that was a
good negotiation.
That was a fun job. And this is, does anyone know who this is? Can you tell it all? You can't tell. Yeah. Well, Peter Brandt, at this point in time, he was commissioning artists to do Stephanie, his wife. And one of the best ones was Maurizio Catalan. He made her a trophy. But I'm the first woman he asked. And I thought, okay, how could I possibly, compete with Maurizio and Julian Schnabel? And they were doing paintings of her. And I thought, well, and they all dealt with her glamour and her beauty, and I thought, well, she's a mom of 4 kids. So I made this painting of her and her daughter, and it's called It's Mine, and they're devouring each other. And that was the only thing I could do. I never could really follow the dictates of what had gone before me. I just kept trying to disrupt it. I never actually invented anything. I just take what's there and push it right to the envelope. Now this is an artist, a friend of mine, Wangechi Mutu, who also works with disruption in popular culture. And she uses collages. And she was 8.5 months pregnant, and she wanted me to document her pregnancy. And so she made herself into a collage. She styled herself. But we just started I wanted to create this fierce African woman. She's from Kenya. And so I wanted to use gold and silver and diamonds. And so I made this mixture of vodka and silver cake mix. So this is a painting, and I just, she got naked, and what I found out is if you're pregnant, you are fearless, because she's from a very prim culture, and she took all her clothes off, and she was taking this vodka mix and, making a fountain out of it, and coating it, and this is one of the paintings that I ended up making out of her. So it's like she got the images documenting her pregnancy, but I got about 5 paintings out of it, and it was just by playing. We were just playing around, and I think she's iconic. And then this is, once I get asked all the time to shoot people, and it's so funny because I'm not interested in shooting them at all, but this one I love was Fiona Apple. And at this point in my investigation, I started trying to capture, I don't know how to shoot a straight portrait. So I start thinking about all the detritus of the culture, the ads that are everywhere, that left behind ads that are graffitied over. And I kept thinking, I want to create that, like all those images we see constantly, of bus stops and subway stops and billboards and with glass over them and graffiti and scritchiti and sweat. So I put Fiona behind that, and this is the image I got of her. That was for New York Magazine. And I only shoot the people I'm interested in. And you know who that is? George Clooney. Yeah, I did a project for him for W Magazine, the art issue, and they had all the artists shoot Clooney. And so I was still, operating under the image of, I couldn't make a better portrait of him than Kathy Opie. So I just, put him behind the glass and, created the way I see him. And that's the graffiti from my youth, the pirate.
And I will just also interject that there's always this thing when they do the art issue where they tell a few artists, oh, you're going to get the cover, you're going to get the cover.
I thought this was to be the cover.
And Marilyn sent that to me. I said, it's not going to be the cover, but it's fantastic.
They had a hard time with it. I think he famously has a sense of humor, so.
I don't think they showed it to him.
Yeah, caution. And then that's one of my icons. Does anyone know Michelle LeMay? She's Rick Owens' wife. And, I figure there's no images in the culture really of elder beauties. And, they usually get sandblasted away or photoshopped away. So I wanted to celebrate. She's got a grill and she's got, same thing. I thought, well, maybe she should be an ad, and I just wiped away the rain. And that's Michelle. And then the last one I just shot was Stella, another animal rights activist. So my heart and hers, we bonded over that. But I grew up in the 60s, and you just brought up John Lennon, and I'm thinking, when I was in high school or junior high, whenever I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, to think I would be photographing Paul McCarthy's daughter. It blew my mind, and she couldn't be more pleasant. And I'm still, they asked me, this is for Bazaar, it's coming out in November. They asked me who I wanted to shoot. They'd say, anybody you want? And the only one I wanted was Lena Dunham. I really want to shoot Lena because I think she's someone who really changes the dialogue. So that's my iconic, and I can't work universally, but I can work locally. So this is what I'm doing. So thanks for listening. I forgot. Oh, Jeannie made me put in a painting. So that's a painting of shoes.
For all the people with the shoe fetish.
Yeah, this is it at Regan Projects. It's just my show that opened there last year.
How big is that one?
13 feet. And also it was also operating under the aegis of the old ads.
So Thelma has just spoken for about an hour with Glenn Lowry. So I don't think you need. Well, actually, you do, because this is a totally different subject. But you did say something while speaking with Glenn. You said that you wanted to make sure that art had a meaning, and what you do has a meaning. And since we're talking about icons, I thought we'd start with something that's right in the front of the Studio Museum in Harlem, the Me-We, and wanted you to discuss that a bit as an icon.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because when you brought up, Jeannie, to us this idea of icon, I immediately thought less of people first, but more of artworks, right? What are iconic artworks? And, at my museum and our collection, we think about that. What are the icons of the collection? And in thinking about how the collection is developed, we have commissioned a few works with that in mind. And the Me-We that Jeannie is speaking of is a neon work by the artist Glenn Ligon, which is literally in neon, the words Me-We. And the piece is called Give Us a Poem. And it actually comes from the words of Muhammad Ali, who at the time, giving a lecture, was asked after, because of his famous way with words, by a group of students. They said, Muhammad, he was Cassius Clay at the time, Cassius, give us a poem. And he stood up and he said, Me-We. And he sat down.
Oh, God.
And Glenn took those words and created this neon work to live in our lobby because of what we know they meant at the time, coming out of Muhammad Ali's mouth in that time in the late 60s, this idea of the individual and the collective, but also so they could stand in the present, right there on 125th Street, as a sort of icon beaming out onto the street with this message. So I think that in thinking about iconic artworks, and also that it would be in dialogue with our David Hammond's African American flag, which is the first work commissioned. Again, perhaps the most iconic work in our collection because it's the one that is seen by everyone all the time outside of the building. So I think that idea of iconic artworks is important, but I would throw the question to Marilyn about whether or not for an artist making an iconic work is significant.
I don't think one thinks of making an iconic work. Artists, if they're any good, they make their vision. And it becomes a different animal when it's finished. You know, the world takes it. And I mean, did you think Picasso made Guernica to change people's minds about the Republic, you know, of Spain? And that just ends up being an icon. So I don't, nobody knows what's going to be an icon. The bunny, Jeff Koons' bunny, that's iconic. I think that isn't up to us. We just have to shine a light on the lives we live.
But do critics decide, Jerry? Do critics decide what's iconic?
Critics don't decide anything anymore, which is fine with me. When we used to, like Clement Greenberg. Big bully. Big bully. It was only older alcoholic Jewish guys, right? Which they were pretty great. That's fine. But, otherwise you need not have applied. And he also went critically blind after Color Field, basically. Anyway, so it's okay that critics don't decide anymore. I don't think anyone decides. I know we could get into who actually decides. And I think that, by the way, gives you freedom again. Since I could write that you are lousy or you are great. And you know what? In spite of what some artists in this room might think, it really doesn't have that much impact on you. Well, I've come after your shows. It doesn't hurt you at all.
It does, Jerry.
It does. And
Not
by the way, Jerry, you have also changed your mind on several occasions, and your writing has become so fluid and so reactive, in fact, that you can write. You've probably written miles and miles on Jeff Koons just in the last year, trying to decode and trying and figure out.
Quickly about Koons, I can say this as somebody that really admires a handful of this nuts work. I really do, and you can read me on it. I'm on the record. But I want to say something on all of our behalfs about Jeff Koons. In all honesty, and again, as a real fan, if all of his art slipped into a salt mine by accident and were buried there for 1,000 years, I don't think humanity would be that much worse off. And I mean that, where we lost one Vermeer from the Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum, and last month, when you heard that it might be back, everybody's like, oh God, yes. I mean, I went on CNN and even appealed to the stealers of it and said, we don't care if you go to jail. Here's what I really wanted to say about what Thelma said. It's hard for any object to gain traction, as Jeannie was talking about right now. You could do a great show. Marilyn could have a great show up elsewhere. Heidi Zuckerman could have a great show up. Jeannie can have one. And now, because of this weird curse that we're in love with, we're all so busy everywhere all the time, at the same time, everywhere, everybody, blah, 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 that there's so many conversations going on that there is no one conversation. Now, there's an advantage to that because it means that the art world down the street, which you're in, all of us were never in the great club. You'd always look at that table in the high school lunchroom and go, I'll never get to sit there. Now your stupid table, somebody's looking at it, but you're not an icon.
But
you, Thelma, have channeled enormous energy through a pretty small, how big is your institution, exhibition space?
10,000 square feet.
10,000 feet can change the world. Yeah. That's what we know. Energy is everything. Passion, drive, and you got great ideas, obviously.
But also, let's talk about some of your tricks. You know, Thelma has the most amazing titles. I'll just to name a few: Blackmail, Radical Presence, Heat, Mind, Body, and Soul. You named Glenn Ligon's show Stranger, The Black Romantic. You've riffed on Theaster Gates when he recently titled a work Sit, Sup, Sip, Sing. and said holding court and invited artists to come and visit you. I also want Marilyn to answer this afterwards. But talk to us a little bit about some of these tricks to make sure your shows get heard and get out there. And the kind of
You know, I think the thing about getting heard and getting out there is being part of the conversation to begin with, right? The show not as an isolated act, but part of a larger cultural conversation about art and artists. Being in it, being part of it, producing it, convening it, creating the context for it to exist in, and having the exhibition be part of that narrative. And so when it's part of that narrative, it already has a conversation that it's sitting in, as opposed to the sort of abstract, idea of an exhibition that sort of lives on its own, waiting for the kind of critical approval, perhaps, that then will drive it in the world.
Marilyn, you have a bit of a sweet tooth, we all know, but I'm just going to name some of your titles. Wet on Wet, Pop Rocks, Hard Candy, Bazooka, Glazed, Orange Crush.
I'm getting a buzz.
You both frame somehow your work, your exhibitions. Jerry, even in your titling of your writings. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that comes to be your titles?
The words just come and they just feel right, basically. I wish it was a more intellectual answer, but it just feels absolutely right on.
But they're all a little sexy, you have to admit.
I don't notice that.
No?
Yeah.
Only to a straight man?
It's really true.
What? Desirous.
Well, I
love women.
Yeah, I
Desirous.
I love the idea of picturing what it feels like to look, and there aren't any words for that really. It's kind of this love-hate thing. We love to look at glamorous images, and we know we're never going to look like that. And everything is in the gray area, and I'm not moralistic. I really believe not in judging, and I love the paradox. So I like to have both arguments in the same image all the time. So like that's trash, graffiti, water, and but it's really as good looking as I could possibly make it.
So let's.
Not in
I'm
these
going to do that in a
shoes.
second. So we're at the Aspen Festival, the Ideas Festival. There are lots of buzzwords here. One is soft power. Does the art world have soft power, Thelma?
I think it does. I think the art has soft power. Culture has soft power. I think we need to learn how to galvanize it more powerfully and productively in the art and culture world.
Okay. So we are going to take questions from the audience, but we ask that you go up to the microphone right here, and we will begin.
And make it a question, not a
Richard,
big statement.
you have to use the mic.
And you know what? I'm just going to say I'm going to say one more thing before Richard goes up. I'm going to say one more thing because I'm not Katie Couric, and I'm not on Facebook. I noticed she went on Facebook and had people write in questions. I did ask a few close friends in the art world for some questions, and the questions that came up, all the questions actually, had to do with art and money. Mira actually summed it up pretty well. Let's see if I can find your question, Mira. Yes. Let's see. So you said we see red, yellow, blue, and money. So is it possible to look at art right now without the dollar signs attached? So I'm going to have that one question about money, and just to say, come up with some other questions as well. And I'm going to have you all answer that question right now. Jerry.
I can't talk about money because I have no theory of the market. I think it's our job as people who love art to accept that the money is here and try to look through the money, accept that the money is there. We wouldn't have jobs without the money. I don't know. You answer the money thing. I'm all for money. I need more.
All right.
Richard, do you want to go to
Richard, come on up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they want everybody to get in line.
Yeah.
Well, there's no questions.
Yeah.
Well, you can eat.
I have plenty of questions.
Free food.
My question.
I just want to say that wasn't exactly my question.
So Mira, why don't
okay.
you ask your question?
Good.
After Richard.
Okay, my question related to something that Thelma was talking about earlier about iconic images or iconic works of art in the collection. I was just reading something about the Tate rehanging, and they said that they were forced to define their hanging around central pieces that people travel from all over the world to see. And if Mr. and Mrs. Clark and Percy by Hockney is not up, they are disappointed. Sure. And that's really interesting that these images become iconic by public demand, by dissemination, and they change throughout the decades.
Totally. And I think institutionally we all have that. I think when people come to the Studio Museum in Harlem and Barclay Hendricks' Lottie Mama is not on view, I hear that. That is perhaps the one work of art in our collection that is consistently that people come to and ask for. Now maybe it's because it's a beautiful painting, a photorealistic portrait of a black woman with a huge afro on a gold background. Maybe it's because Barclay Hendricks actually made it in the form of iconic paintings, but it does have that quality that it feels to people like it defines in some way, not just the institution, but the ethos of the art that we represent.
Yeah, so in a funny way, iconic images are driven by public response.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Oh.
Mira.
You have to get to the mic because they're taping. Yeah.
I just didn't want my question to rest. That wasn't
okay,
my
good.
question exactly.
Go ahead.
So my question was, can any critic, including the collector, the critic, but especially the critic, are you able to look at art without the money sign? Because so much of criticism, I don't know, because there's so much of criticism.
I don't even, whatever.
Well, there's...
I love you, but I don't know what it costs half the time. I know it's all more than $15,000, which is huge amount of money. It means that the artist is part of the 5%. I don't care how poor they are. If they're making 15 G a pop, they're making more money than me.
Since we're getting into it, so
30?
let's go to Marilyn Dumas for a minute, okay, just for a minute. I felt like, and please correct me, I felt like the day Don's dying, but because I shouldn't pick a public fight, but I can't help it. So, because I love you all. I think you're all my icons in a way. That's why it's so exquisite watching all of you on stage and doing so. I mean, it's so great. Thank you. Okay, anyway, very quickly. Okay. All right, so just for Marilyn Dumas, I really felt like the day she sold, was it for $3 million or $1 million? All criticism about her changed. And it broke my heart because knowing Marilyn Dumas, knowing how much I love her work, it just really hurt me. So I want to know, do you really not like Marilyn Dumas? Or did it really like you went after her? And there is a kind of thing about going after artists that are being used in one way or another by auction houses, by gallerists. I mean, is it the artist's fault that the goddamn work sells for so much money?
Okay, very briefly. I agree with you, Mira. It is never the artist's fault. Ever. I want all artists to make money. All of them. Bad, good, the very bad. I didn't like her work way before she sold for $1 million. And did I change my mind? Her last show at Werner seemed to get more derivative to me. And I wrote that. You love it. And you have your good reasons. What did I change? Now she's worth $25 million.
And I will just say, as a woman, a lot of us were celebrating that $3 million price tag. I correspond, daily or during the auctions, especially with a lot of collectors and people who are outside of the art world. And sometimes, I sent an email, for instance, to Jay-Z when the Basquiat hit 50 million, and he hit me right back, and he said, "I'm celebrating," and he was very precise about that. There are markers from different cultures and that are important and that we look at with the money attached to it.
You can't be a collector and be outside of the art world. You can't be an art collector and be outside of the art world. You can buy art, but you're not a collector. It's not the same thing.
There's one. Ann Cook. You got to get up there.
Yeah.
Or yell. You have to really
Yeah.
yell.
Could someone bring it? Yeah, thank you, Janet. It's wrapped. Yeah. Oh, we might have.
So can you hear?
Yeah.
I just want to challenge Jerry a little bit about the critic.
Talk to them.
No, no.
God.
I thought about this when you were speaking about a critic making a difference.
Right.
I remember when I was growing up in the art world in the 80s, the phrase was, "You are nobody unless Hilton Kramer hates you."
Right.
You are
That
not.
de-
You
that
are not
defined
an
me.
artist
Yeah.
unless Hilton Kramer hates you. So, do you think that's different today than it was in the 80s?
Oh my God, yes. I very briefly, except for my wife, who's the real deal, I think. And that's who I'm in awe of. I'm married to Roberta Smith, who I think is the best critic alive. And give her a MacArthur, you big dopes. We got no insurance. We got no retirement. You have no idea. You hate us critics. It's a miserable life, just like yours. Just like yours. Anyway, except for her, maybe everybody could come after you. It's fine. You're somebody no matter what. It doesn't. That's my answer. But I don't want to keep talking to other people.
Okay.
I'm sorry if it's an unsatisfying answer. You've all turned on me by now.
We haven't.
I wanted to ask about icons and sort of a image age in which they're all viral, in which we sort of consume images and then discard them. But more people will look at something than ever before in art history. And so how do you feel about the way that we value what we see when we see so much?
I think that's really the interesting, exciting, but also really troubling conundrum, right? That there is so much, we see so much, so many more people see it, but for a short time, perhaps with very little that's lasting. And I'm not sure, being in the midst of it, that I have an answer to that.
Yeah.
I know it's something that, as a curator, as someone who still very much values the experiences of works of art in real time, in real space, but also lives deeply in the virtual world, right? Sort of, curating every day on my Instagram and, all these other forms. It really is something that I don't think we have a good answer to yet, like how this will all play out with this sort of breadth of availability and consumption, but very, very little that lasts of it.
I think she's right. I think we're a wealth of information is going to change young little kids, like they're on their iPods that can't even read yet. Their brains are going to actually alter, and I think it's a work in progress right now. But I think it's progress, and I like the idea of this happening.
Well, we're communicating.
One thing I
via
want to add:
images.
it decimates prejudices. Information gets rid of prejudices. I think it's a positive thing.
Or even with work of art, the TV show, and what happens to those artists who you're even voting and judging for when are they even relevant or?
Of course they are. They were incredibly courageous. We thought to take on the game show atmosphere. The art world really isn't a game show. We don't. It doesn't function on that level. And we had a lot of fun with the artists, and in fact, I know Jerry and I both still correspond with a few of them. Now, there was this moment where we all walked in the room on the first day, and I looked at a painting, and I said, "Oh, that's going to be our winner." And the producer said, "No, that's breaking the rules. You can't do that." And so we had to go through the motion of week-to-week competition. But we really are looking. We look after those artists, and the idea that one of those artists in a game show could become a great artist is fascinating. It's just another avenue.
So I actually just wanted to piggyback off that question because I thought you had something very interesting to say about it, and that art now in the time, I just want to reference the example of, YouTube videos. If you see a YouTube video that goes over 5 minutes or 6 minutes in length, a lot of people from the millennial generation will be like, no, I'm just not watching that because you're not willing to dedicate the time to it. Does that, and I'm not directing this question to anyone in particular, but does that worry you at all that maybe we don't have that ability to really delve into substance of art in whatever form it may be?
No. Doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
So what?
I do think if you could make a ring cycle on the YouTube, it would be godlike. I'm good with 19-hour art. I love like early like Philip Glass
that's
and
called
like
performance art.
20-hour shit, you know.
The national 6 hours.
You'll figure it out. Time is a very complex alchemical element in art, and it's still being worked out in video, film, sound. This takes a long time. They've been working since the caves on sound, how to make a sound stay in your mind forever.
Well, Marilyn, you actually make quite a few videos that we actually build websites for. How do you make decisions on your timing?
Well, it's all about communication. In my case, I really want, but I'm in love with, how do you say his name, Jarkanson? Ragnar. Yeah, and I mean, one of the best things I saw last year was the 6-hour performance of the National at PS1.
Oh yeah,
I watched the whole thing. I loved every minute of it. I wasn't bored. So there's something that goes on with overlooking at something like so long that you're just like what is that snake? That mesmerizing.
And we're an art world that looks at white paintings for 20 years at a time.
Yeah. It's its own element,
right.
You just have no prediction. Like, I don't make anything for anybody. I make everything for just me. And I have to. Otherwise, I'm fucked.
But it's a very good question, and something that I learned from a lot of artists that I work with is sometimes the whisper is heard much louder in the room, and that's not something that you can teach to a young person. That's something that you pick up by going to a museum and seeing a very specific work of art.
Yeah.
So,
Can I?
yes, Janet.
The
We
thought
have
that
just a few
occurs
more
to me,
minutes, so-
the question is like, are there new things at work, new forces making artwork iconic? And 10 years ago, I built a sculpture in Portugal. And this year, I just got a call that Google Earth, when you click on Portugal, they've made the sculpture the icon. Well, who determines that? And are there new ways that images are being spread and chosen? And what is the force that is making these sorts of things happen?
There's they're finding dead bodies on Google images. It's phenomenal.
Google
They have
Maps.
discovered missing dead bodies. In the future, we'll know nothing and everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you're forever.
How do your works like MeWe? How are they being
would we
disseminated? Is the question. Are there new ways
We
that?
wouldn't know that.
Well, but I think Thelma, you would know how images of your work are being disseminated.
Always, but
Yeah.
how that traction happens, however, I cannot judge, right?
Right.
I can't.
We don't know.
So right, we don't know at all. Can I just say one thing, Jeannie? Because I think my own sort of interest in the idea of icons really has been made more rich by the work of Kurt Anderson. So I want to give a shout out to his American Icon series on Studio 360. No, really. And every time they do one, at the end they say, "Send in yours," and I'm so tempted to, but I never do it. But
So now you will.
No,
Now you will. On that note, thank you so
thank you,
much
Kurt.
for being here.
That was great.